Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Within Range Coaching Podcast. I'm Ranger, a certified holistic success coach, and in this podcast, I break down the journey entrepreneurs face as they start their organizations, overcome roadblocks in their way, and create an impact that lasts. We talk with entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and purpose-driven community members just like you. Together, we learn how to grow our impact and develop ourselves as the people behind the mission. My intention is to help more people. And remember, if you're curious about expanding your impact, growing a community, or defining your mission, vision, or values, we can chat off the record. You can find my info in the show notes or at my website, withinrangecoaching.com. We're also looking to build our sponsor community with organizations and individuals who align with our values of fearless innovation, social responsibility, and courageous candor. If you're interested in helping us highlight individuals doing great work in the world and share these values, reach out to me directly at ranger@withinrangecoaching.com. I know you're just as eager to get started as I am, so let's jump right in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Within Range Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Ranger. And guys, we're still in the middle of my Walk Across America series where I'm interviewing the folks that made my walk across this country possible. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Ranger Reese, a radio personality from Socorro, New Mexico that has a global reach. Ranger Reese, as we all mentioned in the episode, helped me out when I was passing through the middle of the state, through New Mexico, just south of Albuquerque, New Mexico, in a small town called Socorro. And in today's episode, we'll be exploring the unique role that local radio plays in connecting and supporting our communities, especially in rural areas. From promoting local artists to being a vital source of information during emergencies, radio has an impact far beyond what we often realize. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, relax, and settle in as we pull back the curtain on the world of community radio.
Good afternoon. Good to see you, Ranger.
Awesome. Good to see you too, Mr. Ranger Reese. This is going to be a little bit confusing for everybody. Two Rangers on a podcast.
Ranger 1 and Ranger 2. Which one do you want to be?
I think that you have done a bit more stuff, so I'll let you have one for this recording. Awesome. Well, no, Mr. Ranger Reese, how's it going today over in lovely Socorro?
It's going well over in Socorro. We got some cloud. We might get a little rain. We kind of have warm temperatures, but nothing like what you've been through out there.
Yeah. It's been a lot of temperature and weather issues. So, but for those that are listening, Ranger Reese is one of the host family folks that got me through New Mexico. You guys are kind of like in the center of the state for the most part, right? Yeah.
Socorro's kind of almost the heart of that. But we're at the junction also, the 25 and the 60, the old Hoof Highway, and I think the 360 that goes out to the Smoky the Bear Forest over there in Lincoln County. So yeah, we're at a good nexus here. And I met you up on the 60 east, and so we're right in the heart of things. Yeah,
and you guys are just south of Albuquerque, so yeah, pretty much right in the center, but. It was right after, once I got past you guys in the New Mexico area is when I started getting hit by the monsoons a lot more. So I got like my last just having to deal with the hot weather for a little bit. So, but no, I really enjoyed my time over in Socorro, hanging out with you, learning a little bit about the radio, and I'm excited for today's conversation. So can you go ahead and introduce yourself, what you do, and share what your intention for today's episode is?
Thanks, Ranger Kielak. I really appreciate it. I'm a pleasure to get to talk to you again. The episode today, like I said, we're just going to talk a little bit about local radio. I run a little radio station in Socorro, New Mexico, with a global reach, and we have a really good time with that. We've got some really great talent that comes in. We do some live shows where I'm a host, but I also work with a lot of the community. I reach out to a lot of the mental health programs here. Reach out to 4-H and FAA. My goal with a cowboy and western country radio station is to try to help promote rural lifestyle and the agricultural community. I think it's important for kids in 4-H and FAA to hear songs that are about their parents' lifestyle, their lifestyle, that lifestyle of a working rancher or working farmer. And we focus on that here. in New Mexico. As I said, we're in the heart of New Mexico. A lot of our farmers are 40 acres or less, but we do have some of the best chili in Lemitar. And so, yeah, I hope to maybe give people who want to understand a little bit. I think a lot of people just assume local radio happens. We take for granted how much it means to have a local personality, a local presence, somebody keeping their pulse on the heart of the community and communicating with people both during regular times and during emergency times and during tragedies. And that radio, especially like it says, whether it's broadcast radio and it comes through on your FM radio, or today many people are finding with Bluetooth and mobile phones, you can listen to the radio station online. And it's been a real surprise for me because I started out with a local radio focus and I found myself with an international audience. And that's changed my perspective as well to be a little bit more broad, since I know that I'm talking to people around the globe and mixing music for different people. In fact, I have people from Ireland and Europe send me, artist lists. So I hope people get a little appreciation for that and take a little thought on your local community radio station and what radio, both internet and broadcast, mean to you. So hopefully I can answer a few questions of Ranger Kielak's discussion and tell you a little bit about what it's all about.
Yeah, and I was in our little, I don't know, pre-podcast discussion, or even when you and I were hanging out in Socorro, it made me think of, in one of my networking groups, there was a guy that owned a cleaning company, and I was chatting with him one day in one of our one-to-ones, and he was saying how with the cleaner, his job is to be invisible. Like, the only reason that somebody would think about him would be if there's something wrong. And I feel like that's one of those things with companies like that, like they're so pivotal and so backbone-ish of a community or a business that people would only really think about the radio or think deeper about it if there was something wrong. If something happened, if something bad happened to the radio, or if it was not on, or, something weird. So that's why I was so excited to have you on, because I feel like you'd be able to kind of give that behind the scenes, pull the curtain to the side and say, hey, this is what's all going on behind the scenes, and kind of give folks like a positive reason to learn about what's going on. Does that kind of make sense?
I think the biggest thing for people to understand, like in 2018, we lost our broadcast radio station for over a year. During that time, we had some severe flooding that took place. We almost had a train track that was washed out. Some of the local restaurants' equipment actually flooded and washed down the street a little bit. We had all this activity going on, but without local radio, we didn't have an ability to communicate with the public and to let the public know what was going on. Where was the crew working with the county to remove some of the mud? Where was deep mud? Where was the flooding on I-25? So we find that a lot of times, like you said, it's invisible. And as long as we're just listening to our music, we're fine if it's got our favorite songs. But we don't realize how pivotal having somebody like myself who has contacts in amateur radio and in public safety, to get that information out to the public, and to not just be a 9-to-5 kind of job, but to be kind of a job where if something's happening, somebody gets on the radio and you can turn on your radio and they'll tell you what's happening, and it'll help you make plans of how to get to work, how to get groceries, what is open, what isn't open. And it's a real vital thing in our community that we don't think about until something happens. And we've seen this in arguments before with the FCC, talking about the lack of local radio in emergencies and stuff like that, because it's more than just getting a broadcast tone that gives you maybe a 1-2 minute message. It's about having someone that knows the community well. I mean, we've had issues here where people have been abducted, and there was nobody that actually knew the community well enough in that communication, and they didn't find the person in time. But if somebody had been communicated with that knew the community and was communicating information, they might have been able to save that person because they're local. They were local to the region and they knew it. So there's a lot of things you don't really recognize you need as long as things are good. And again, aside from that, even like you said with the cleaner, radio is there to help promote local businesses, to bring local people in. Artists, I tell people all the time, your musicians that you see, some of them more than others, but they're trying to run a small business and they're trying to make a living at it. And what we can do to bring local musicians on radio and give them some airtime and playtime with some of the great national artists that everybody loves is really important to them, helping drive album sales, drive people to their events. getting other venues and establishments that play music to call them up and say, hey, we'd like you to come play for us. So what radio does is a pivotal role of connecting us in emergencies, connecting us in good times, connecting us with businesses, connecting us with resources. And you really need someone, in my opinion, local that's connected to the community to do that well.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense to me, that it would be somebody that is local, that they know the environment, they know the community, they know the people, to really, because it sounds like really the role of, in your opinion, and I mean, I agree, of a radio host in a local region is kind of like the center of the spider web. Like you kind of have a feel of what's going on in all different parts, the different businesses, in the case of an emergency, like you're very interconnected to the community.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you go back to ancient times, the position was called a town crier. And he was the one that sat on the corner or sat on the steeple and yelled out or the balcony and told people what the news was and what was going on, and radio is just a different way to do that. We call the coverage contour of our radio broadcast. And the hard part was in 2017, the FCC changed the home studio rule. They changed the rule that said, if you have a radio station in an area, you have to have a studio in that area. You need a studio in that area. Well, with internet and the capabilities and everything, and instead of, we no longer need a studio to do records, to go down and inspect the station records. But so the FCC decided, well, we can do that online. So nobody has to be local anymore. We can use the internet, and I could run a local radio station out of Socorro from Bangladesh because of internet or New York City. And I can run thousands of them that way. And I don't have to have people there, but that doesn't allow you to do the local sports. It doesn't allow you to do the local businesses. It allows them to get national advertising dollars and make a great revenue stream. Mm-hmm. And it serves their bottom line. But having that town crier, that person on radio who's there, who's listening, and it's a dangerous position, as I found out, because you have to be able to challenge the politicians, and they don't like that. But the public needs to know. So it's interesting because there's not a lot of protection for DJs or station people. It's amazing with the FCC that, you don't have to have any technical knowledge to own an FM or AM radio station. You can hire someone to do that. You don't have to know it yourself, and you don't have to have any psychology degrees, which I find amazing because, radio can really affect people's psychology quite immensely when you consider, saying that includes internet radio, both of them, and being sensitive to that. So I take it as a big public responsibility to not only entertain my guests, to inform them, but to consider the mental state and the emotional state of people in what I'm doing. It's not just for me to go on and have a tirade about things because I have a microphone. I have people that I'm serving and that I'm concerned for as my neighbors. And I always start my radio shows with, good morning, friends and neighbors. You're listening to Rio Grande Valley Radio because you're friends and neighbors. And that's my heart.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and argue about laws and regulations. And I don't know, I've worked in code enforcement before, and it's for two guys on a podcast. I don't know how much we can change, but in terms of that whole running a radio station remotely part, it totally makes sense with the capabilities of internet and what we have technology wise, et cetera, et cetera. But like what you were just saying in terms of the emergency preparedness, what happens when the internet goes down, or like you're saying, someone's abducted, or sports games, like the really great local things or the very terrible localized events. It right. Sounds like that's what it still makes the most sense for a local radio station to be hosted by a local personality. So that's really interesting that you've been so willing to take on that, I guess, I don't know, pick up that helmet and say, yeah, I'll do, or pick up the headphones or the microphone more appropriately. Hey everyone, just a quick message. You know that my mission with this podcast is to share stories of influence and impact so that we can help more people help more people. But to do that, I need your support. Please rate, review, and share this podcast. If I could ask for just one favor, it's to just leave a review. It takes about 10 seconds and a few clicks, but it means the world to me and could inspire someone else to make a difference. Thank you so much, and now back to the show. what is your background in terms of radio or broadcast or speaking to a whole bunch of people at once? Like, what made you get into this world?
Well, I think it's gonna be interesting, Ranger Kielak, because again, my background is a consulting engineer, and I traveled everywhere from Kodiak Island, Alaska, to help the U.S. Coast Guard with their emergency radio systems, Florida, Maine. I've been all over, and sometimes when you're out there, you have this, and again, no, we can't. The big thing about the regulations and things is for people to try to understand that this is a machine, this is an instrument that we created, and it needs to be more human. It needs to be less machine and more human. So just state that on what you said there. But when you're around and you travel quite a bit, number one, you go to karaoke, you go to live local music events, you hear artists that you don't hear on the radio. You hear and experience the local talent that doesn't have national or radio exposure, and you listen to a radio and a television, radio specifically, but radio where it's kind of like one of those movie backdrops. No matter where you are, it never changes. It never changes. I spent a turboprop air flight from Anchorage, Alaska to Kodiak with the band that was flying out there to play, and I got turned on to some music I would have never heard otherwise. And so it was always kind of it's like even me being in the Southwest, it's like, why isn't there music here that reflects the culture that I'm in? There should be music that when I turn on a radio here, there should be something that reflects this place where I am. I mean, you just went through Sholo and everything over there, but if you go up north a little bit more there's a Navajo Hopi radio station that you can hear local Dene language on that radio station. And you know where you are because that's the only station that broadcasts Dene and Hopi language, and so as an engineer, as a consulting radio engineer, and that's the other reason that I can do this is because I can do my own engineering. But you go to all these places, you travel all these places, and you've got this continual drumming of these things that are out there, and these people who choose what you do and don't hear. And there's all this other local flavor. There's all this local culture flavor that's not there. So it was always my basically what happened to me was I was working at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory here in Socorro. I was working on active hydrogen masers and other very high-tech stuff, and a radio station came for sale. And it was something that I'd always dreamed about, but never thought it could actually happen. And so it was like, wow, that I can do this. And I can express what I'm expressing to you now that, hey, let's have some local artists on the radio station. I put a local group here called the Cowboy Way. I started broadcasting July 1st, 2017. And within days of putting them on the radio, I had people emailing the station and the person who sold it to me. Who was that? We really love that. We hadn't heard that before. Within a week.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I had affirmation that my dream and my ambition of having local artists and doing something that reflected the Southwest culture where I was at had value to other people than just me. Other than that, it was a gamble. I don't have a long career in broadcast. I'm never qualified for half the stuff I attempt. according to the people who qualify you, but there's the heart of someone who's traveled the country quite extensively, who wanted to do something that was local. The opportunity presented itself. And I, as a radio engineer, it's great because the biggest expense little radio stations have is the engineering. And I could go to local businesses like Tractor Supply Company. I could put the Cowboy Way, a live performance of Cowboy Way, boom, right there on the air, and brought people down to Tractor Supply Company for what they consider one of the best grand openings in New Mexico. And so do I have a lot of experience? Did I have 20 years of going to college and learning broadcast radio and studying entertainment? No. I'm a consumer person. I know the power of music because I have my favorite artists that I go to when I need healing and when I need reflection. And I know the power of music. And I know the power, and I know that the local musicians are small businesses and they're trying to make a success. And it doesn't mean they have to have a platinum or a gold record to do it. They just need to be able to support their family and their lifestyle and keep making music. You know?
And that's such an interesting thing. I don't know. One of the other big things that I love to see out of businesses or nonprofits are the organizations that help other organizations thrive. Kind of like the Venture Center in Little Rock, Arkansas, like as a entrepreneurship hub. Like they help entrepreneurs, with marketing or sales or business plans, et cetera, et cetera. And it sounds like you're very much in that same vein of not just like you were saying, like the local Ace Hardware grand opening, I don't know, sales at the beauty salons or boutiques. Like it's also like it sounds like very unique in the way that you're able to not just say, hey, go to these people's live show at the downtown theater, $5 a ticket or free or whatever. It's like, here's their music. Enjoy. It's right here. Listen to it. Consume it. These are your neighbors too.
Yeah, and it's really special when you take those neighbors and you put their music against national artists, and it sounds just as good. It sounds just as good. I mean, they don't have a big label, but it's not like screeching brakes on the radio. It's good music. It's great music, and it's music that makes people turn their heads and go, "Wow, I haven't heard that before." And it's important because there have been historical situations where by hearing songs, by hearing stories, people get a broader perspective of the world around them, and it can open them to other people that they may not encounter in their day-to-day life. And I think that's important to making us more compassionate for one another when we see that our struggles are the same, and when we hear things that make us aware of different groups that may not be familiar to us.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like what you were saying with you said there's a Navajo area that has their radio station that they play. As soon as you said that, I was like, man, I wish, because I haven't personally listened to a whole lot of radio on my little jaunt. But I was like, man, I wonder, like in all these areas, like, middle of nowhere, South Carolina versus in the city versus Alabama, Mississippi, like what that difference, even just on that straight line through the country would have looked like, let alone completely different cultures, like you were saying the Navajo. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because even what you just said there, I mean, like I said, when you take Georgia and you take some of the places in the South, the struggles that go on in the urban environment and the art that comes out of the urban environment are different than the struggles that go on in the rural environment and the music that comes out of the rural environment. There's commonality, certainly, but there's different tempo. There's a whole lot of different grittier things based on, whether you're in the city or whether you're in a rural environment that come out. And it's kind of neat because, like I said, I just played a mix today of some country and some rock because, one of them's from the city and one of them's from the country, but there's a common human struggle that's rooted in both of these songs.
That's so interesting. Like you were saying that it shows the differences in a way that brings people together is kind of what I was getting from what you were saying before. Yeah,
it can. Like I said, it can be difficult because, like I said, some like I'm going to pick on rap. I'm sorry, rap. I'm going to pick on you. But it's like, some of that city stuff can be very hard and very aggressive. I mean, it's one of the things that threw me. Like I said, sometimes you're in the middle of the Southwest and you're hearing this very hard rap thing coming from New York or Chicago or something like that. And it's like, it just seems so dissonant from where I'm at that it's hard. But sometimes, like I said, I think I don't know. I'm still researching a lot because I think there's interest, like I said, I do Americana to Western swing, but I'm definitely more folk, more country, more Western. I'm more people, and I'm definitely agricultural focused, ranching and farming. I live in an agricultural environment here, but I also live in an environment in Socorro where we have international scientists that are measuring glacier movements in Greenland, that are giving us radio images of black holes right here in Socorro. So it's an environment, but again, if you try to get down to what the human condition is and the human struggle, it's universal. And people may express it differently, and they may use different instruments to express it, but it's the same struggle.
That's so interesting too. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's a whole other episode there, just talking about how music and cultures and all that's kind of intertwined differently. But I guess to kind of focus in on your station and what you do.
what we do here right now, like it says, I do everything from the fresh country, which is some of the latest country that's coming out right now. And there's some really good artists, but I'm the one selecting. I'm not getting it from anybody naturally. I listen, I enjoy the music. And I also listen to my constituents here when I'm in the grocery store, when I'm walking around. I read concert T-shirts. I pay attention to what people are enjoying, and I also put my New Mexico artist in there. So we've got fresh country, we've got old school country, which is classic country, vintage country, your Johnny Cash's, your Dolly Partons, Tom T. Hall, some of the stuff that made country. And what it is. And then, like I says, I do my cowboy and Western country on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And that, again, that's working ranchers in most cases, working farmers in most cases, but also just artists who find that subject in the history of America, because cowboy and Western has a lot of songs about history in it, which is a big thing. Because again, talking about culture, the cowboy songs tie back to the Irish and Scottish ballads of Europe. And a lot of that tradition carries forward and into cowboy culture. And of course, Spain with bringing the horses over. So and down here in New Mexico, I mean, you can't help but have a Spanish English mix in music because that's the culture. And so it reflects who we are. It tells people like FAA, it tells kids like FAA 4-H that, hey, this stuff is cool. And Lainey Wilson, her latest album out, Whirlwind, country's cool again. People are getting back to this blue collar, getting back to working and looking for songs that celebrate not the rich guy running around playing party boy, but the people who are out there living a hard life, but enjoy it because it's their choice, it's their freedom, and it's their expression of their life on the land that they live. And it's kind of cool to see that because, like I said, I've seen when I started out, there was only one other country radio station in Socorro, and now I think we're up to 4. I actually converted one of the radio stations from classic rock to country to compete with me, which I thought was quite an honor.
How funny. That's so cool that it sounds like it's still very also between stations a bit. It's cooperative. Is that kind of fair to say that you guys are all there's still that competition, but it sounds like there's also might be some working togetherness. Is that fair to say? Or
I think there could be. The New Mexico Broadcasters Association, I've had some difficulty there because, like I said, a lot of the broadcasters feel like the FCC license is the creme de la creme, and the rest of you guys are just a bunch of whatever's in your basement. But like I said, it's changing. The world is changing. I mean, the difference between a podcast and a radio stream station is, number one, like what you and I are doing right now. This is a live conversation between you and me. You are somewhere else and I am somewhere else, but at this point in time, we are together. And people will play this back anytime they want to, and it'll be a podcast. But real live radio in the morning says, hey, I'm up with you. I see the sun coming up, and let's get our morning started together. We're going to have coffee together. We're going to talk. I'm going to play some songs. I'm going to try to put you in a good mood. I'm going to be aware that it's Monday and you're kind of groggy and not wanting to get to work. I'm going to be aware that it's Friday and, hey, let's get excited. It's the weekend. It's going to be live because it's like my show Wednesday night with Doug Biggs and I. We connect with people from Carolina to California on Wednesday night, and we're all sitting around on what I call the Ranch House couch. It's not a podcast because it's live. We're all doing this at the same time, and we're getting interactions on text and messaging, and I think it's important for a radio DJ to bring that community together, that it's streamed, that it's live, that this is our moment right now. And when I started out, I was really anti-recording because I was like, no, you're either at that moment or you're not, and you don't deserve it. And I was pretty arrogant and ignorant in that. And then I started having some really great historical interviews that I didn't record. I'm like, uh-oh, I can see where my arrogance is wrong, and I need to start changing. And I did because the podcast is important. The podcast is important, but coming together over the power of radio, over the power of internet, coming together and sharing that time wherever we are is a cool thing.
Yeah, I love how it's also that acknowledgement that there are so many different types of media or forms of communication that we have, and they're all important for very different reasons.
Yeah.
Whether it's, like you were saying, like, hey, I'm your local radio host. I'm drinking coffee from the same shop that you are right now. We see the mountains that the sun is coming up behind right now, like at the same time. And then also that being able to share those conversations, like what you said, like you and I are having right now, like anybody, anywhere. Like I have people, I don't know, I have I think I have people in Germany listening to my podcast too, which is always kind of funny to see. Like all these people from all across the world. So it's just all about that different types of reach and the messages that you're able to promote and facilitate and cultivate on your show.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten Christmas cards from north of Frankfurt, Germany. I've got a good friend in New Forest, England, who's a musician out there, and I've gotten requests from Irish and Scottish stations that listen to my stations. And one of the reasons I realized recording was a good thing to do because of different times of day. But that's been the amazing thing about what I do, because like it says, there's a thing in the radio business that says once a population gets over 1 million, country radio stations go away. Usually country radio, country music usually, fits a very small demographic. I mean, in the heyday of Alabama and the 90s, they were maybe pushing 12 to 14% of the population in their coverage contours for a broadcast radio station. What I've learned as an internet radio station is all those little small populations, anywhere that you've got cell phone coverage, you can go on your mobile phone and you can listen to my internet radio station. So I wound up connecting, I'm going to say hundreds, but it's probably more than that, little communities all around the globe. The farmer in Frankfurt, Germany, who listens into my radio station because he likes the country music, the agricultural focus that I have. The ones in Scotland and Ireland, because we all have, it's all there. There's ranches in Hawaii, and when you start celebrating that, all those little cultures, and you celebrate them on internet radio as one of the medium, I was blown away, and I'm still trying to figure it out. That, how many of these little communities turned in and listened because they could hear songs about the way they live and artists celebrating it from Canada to England. You were here. You really liked the song by Andrew Ferris called Drifting. That song was from Australia. So it's neat because now this rural community, these little rural communities scattered everywhere, have a format in internet radio to connect and listen. And where my ignorance was, I'm not going to record things and I'm just focused on local radio. Suddenly I had to realize, oh my gosh, I have an international audience. I have people in Brazil that listen. It's like, okay, so I'm going to change my focus. It changes things a little bit. Well, a lot actually, because like I says, I don't want to talk about nationality in my shows. I want to talk about human being because that's what's important to me. The nationalities are distinctions, are higher level of distinctions that, hey, if we're milking a cow in Germany, it's the same as milking a cow here. If we're raising agriculture here or there, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all fighting the weather, fighting the soil, fighting environmental changes, struggling. It's hard work, but this defines who we are. And like Keeper of the West by Ryan Fritz, the song, we want to be able to pass this down to our children. We want them to have the same opportunity that we had. And it's important to share the songs that celebrate that.
That's so interesting. I love that. Welcome to the mountaintop. Are you an entrepreneur or nonprofit leader ready to make a bigger impact in the world, but aren't sure how to do it or even where to start? Then join the Never Peak community on School, where bold movers, shakers, and magic makers come together to achieve their dreams and support others on the way to theirs. Our goal is to help leaders change the world by first focusing on themselves. By fostering a community rooted in support and learning, my goal is to help you be more effective in your organization, achieve your biggest dreams, and make time for what really matters in your life. In Never Peak, you'll find weekly book club meetings, engaging courses, weekly mastermind calls, monthly Q&As with industry experts, and networking opportunities that span the globe. Our courses and discussions cover essential topics like personal finance, work-life balance, goal setting, relationship building, business topics, and so much more. Each course is designed to support you to holistically grow yourself as the person behind the mission. And oh yeah, one more thing I forgot to mention. That at the time of recording this, the community is completely free. That's right, you can get started for $0 down. But it won't last for long. All you need to do is to go to school.com/neverpeak or hit the link in the show notes to claim your spot on the mountain. Again, be sure you get in now. I can't wait to see you there and witness the peaks you'll reach in just a few weeks. Being able to recognize, hey, maybe what I'm doing isn't the 100% correct way. What is the best way that serves my audience, that serves those that are listening to the content that I'm putting out? So I think that that's really, I don't know, a cool thing to be willing to change and acknowledge for yourself. So
yeah, I think the biggest thing people, I don't know, for me, the biggest thing is I'm here to serve others. While I'm here to serve others. And then one day I will die, and who's going to, somebody, we need to serve one another. That's where our value and our connection come from, in serving one another. We often talk, you hear thrown around, the word spirit and the word soul. And, for me, soul, when we talk, like it says, when we talk about soul, when you hear like soul, it really is how, like you and I, like our relationship, right? I mean, I didn't have to reach out and help you. I didn't. But now my reality and my character and my personality has been influenced by connecting with you, as well as you has with me. And that is a soul extension. Because when I go, that change in you is still going to be there. Maybe. Depending on the impact that we have on others' lives by looking out for their needs and caring for them, and how we're able to do that. That's what's gonna go further than my own life is servitude. And servitude is really the root of things. Because I when I play music, when I do DJ, I mean, I don't do it for the money. I do it because people are suffering right now. They're struggling. And if I can play music that makes people happy and I can see joy come over people's faces, I'm done. That as much suffering as people are going through right now, struggling, everything going on in the world, if you can have an hour or two of enjoyment and joy, that's the most I could hope for.
Yeah, no, that whole idea of serving humanity, that resonates extremely deeply with me. And, the community that I want to build, whether it's here or school or whatever platform that I don't know, posting things on. So, and that was something that I was, so when we had our conversations in Socorro, when you would pick me up, that I kind of was like, wow, this guy, like, we're aligned on a lot of deeper level stuff, not just that we have the same name, but it goes a lot deeper than that. So, but no, yeah. Ranger Reese, I think that that's a fantastic outlook and a fantastic focus. But if folks wanted to listen to your show, to check you out, learn more about you, and connect on the interwebs, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Well, I basically right now I do 3 morning shows a week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Right now, on Rio Grande, and that's an E. There's an E on the end of the Grand. Rio Grande Valley Radio.com, and I do 3 morning shows right now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, between 7 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. That's here in New Mexico, so it's based on New Mexico time, and we do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then of course Wednesday night we have a very special Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. It's not going to happen next week, but it will happen the following week. Doug Figgs, he's a 2023 IWMA New Mexico Entertainer of the Year nationally. He's got a resume with songwriting awards that go back to 2014. And we have a very fun show on Wednesday nights at 6:30 p.m. when he's in town. He does a lot of performances all around, travels quite a bit. And we have that on Wednesday night at 6:30. And we also play back the recorded show on Saturday mornings at 8:30 a.m. And that's good for our European listeners over there to get in, because it's about 3:30, 4:30 in the afternoon, their time. They let us know. And so that's again, if you want to listen in, you can listen in 7 days a week. We do everything from Americana to Western Swing, but we do have theme days on Mondays, our fresh country, and Tuesdays and Thursdays are traditional, some of the old school country, classic country from the last century. And then, of course, we do our unique blend of cowboy and Western country music on Wednesdays and Saturdays, which celebrates agricultural ranchers and farmers. And the cowboy and the cowgirl, nonetheless.
The cowboys and the cowgirls and the FFA and the 4-H. We'd love to see it. No, that's awesome. Ranger Reese, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. All of that information I will compile into the show notes to make it easy for folks to find. But other than that, I just want to say thank you again for not only your help getting through the Land of Enchantment, but for sharing some of your information and your expertise on our show today.
Well, thanks for having me. And remember, Socorro was named for a place of help when the Spaniards came through. So proud to extend the spirit of the Piro Indians and help you through Socorro. And glad to see your journey's going well and you're meeting a lot of new great people. And thanks for taking the time from your journey to share my journey. It's been good to intersect at this point.
Of course. Thank you. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Within Range Coaching Podcast. A huge thank you to Mr. Ranger Reese for sharing his insights and experience with us. It's clear that local radio is more than just a medium for music. It's a lifeline for communities, a promoter of local culture, and a vital part of our daily lives. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review, as it will only help us with our mission of helping more people help more people. And don't forget to tune into Ranger Reese's station, Rio Grande Valley Radio, to experience the unique blend of local and global content that he curates. Until next time, remember to have fun, stay safe, and be yourself. I'll catch you in the next one.